In just a couple of seconds, I'm going to be introducing author Stephen Rushin, and his newest book is called Stingray Afternoons, and it is all about the 70s. If you grew up in the 70s like I did, you are going to love this book. I mean, he gives us so much information about all the products that we use, the commercials we watched, the shows we watched. I was just blown away by all of the stuff that I've learned about what was my childhood. He graduated in 1984. He was born in 66, which is the exact age of my brother. And so I can really, really relate to a lot of it. And I think if you love nostalgia of the 70s, you will love this book. And by the way, I'm trying this mic close to my mouth because my son keeps telling me that I need to put it closer to my mouth. So I've tried stands and it just isn't working right. So in the meantime, I'm going to hold the mic. Anyway, so here's Stephen. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be talking with author Steve Rushin, and we're going to be talking about his newest book called Stingray Afternoons. And he has the copy of it so we can see the cover of this book, and he will hold it up so we can see the cover. I love that cover. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I am so happy to be talking with you because I love this book. And there's a good reason why I love this book, because I was born in 64 and my brother was born in 66. So you are his age. So I kind of relived his childhood through you.
Well, we had somebody, I'm one of five, so we had somebody born in 61, 65, 66, 69, and 72. But I've talked to people who were born in the 80s, people who were born in the 50s. You know, I grew up, I was 3 when the 70s started and 13 when the 70s ended, so it's very much a book set in the 70s. But, I really wanted to write a book that was about childhood. So if you were ever a child, some parts of it would resonate. For me, I wanted a Schwinn Stingray bike. Other people might have wanted a flexible flyer or an Atari, video game console or something. But it's that kind of childhood longing that I think resonates no matter what year you were born.
Absolutely. I mean, I love this book because you grew up in a neighborhood kind of like mine, and I think that that's what's a little bit different nowadays. Is that I don't ever think I recreated the. I have 6 children, and any neighborhood we lived in, I don't think I gave them the childhood that I had back in the 70s because we are more fearful parents. So, for some reason, I don't, send my children out for 12 hours a day and just realize they're going to be home in time for dinner. Like, I just don't do that. And my mom had no problem with saying, get out and then come back for dinner and figure it out. So,
That's what parents did, and I don't think you want to give your child the same childhood that you had, no matter how happy that childhood was. But even if you did, you wouldn't be able to do it today. I've said this before, but I think part of it, at least my own theory on it, is that the rise of 24-hour cable news made it so that if something happened to a child when I was a kid in Minneapolis, if something happened to a kid in Phoenix, you didn't hear about it. It wasn't on your local news. Now, when something happens anywhere, you hear about it either on cable news, there's an alert that comes to your phone, the news is streaming in your pocket 24/7, and it feels like something bad is constantly happening. I don't think it's happening any more than it ever did. It's just that we know about every
mm.
single instance now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do agree with that. And, I send my children off with their cell phones. Okay. And I always think to myself, how did my parents do it? Like, but we had a small neighborhood. I mean, it was a small town. So it was like, I guess if something happened, I would be able to go to anybody's house and phone them for anyway. But like now the thought of them not having a phone, it's crazy.
Here's, here's how you do it. Here's how you do it. I'm going to lean forward here. Remember this?
Yeah,
This works.
yes, that's awesome.
It's When I started to write this book, I looked on eBay and I got a banana yellow rotary
Oh
dial
my God.
telephone with 60 feet of coiled. It's like the one that was wall mounted in our kitchen.
Yes.
This one, unfortunately, is on my desk because my wife wouldn't allow me to mount one on our kitchen wall, but it worked. It rings like a 5 alarm fire. The lowest possible volume is still heart attack inducing. And the day it arrived, I plugged it in. It was retrofit to work now. And we waited around to get a phone call because nobody calls our landline anymore. And when the phone finally did ring, the kids gathered around. I answered it, and it was a robocall from the doctor's office asking me to confirm my appointment by pressing one. So I still had to hang up the
Oh,
phone and go into the next room and pick up the regular landline and press one. So as much as I wanted to time travel back to the 70s in this book, I realized that there's only so much you can do to re-immerse yourself in that period. A lot
yeah.
of it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was laughing out loud at some most of this. Okay, I was listening to it and I was reading it on Kindle through WhisperSync. And when I was in my car and listening, I was laughing hysterically, especially when you talked about like when somebody would be on the phone, since you brought up the phone, and the cord, because we didn't live in a very big house. We lived in a townhouse, just the four of us. But you could actually walk like all the way around, and so you'd like follow the cord to find the person to get the phone. It's like
It was
I was
like
laughing.
a mime, the old mime routine where they're doing this.
Yes.
Would do, and then you invariably it would snake down the stairs from the kitchen, and my sister would be halfway down the stairs, and she'd look up, I'm on the phone, and you'd pick up an extension and pretend that you didn't realize she was on the phone,
Yes.
and then my dad would get on and say, you have 5 more minutes, and
Yep.
this is something that kids will have no concept
No.
of what that was like. But you're right, if you were away and you called home, um, sometimes you got a busy signal, sometimes you called a friend, and so you just try the next day, and yet somehow it worked. And there was a beauty to not being on call 24/7 and not checking your messages. The first thing when you wake up in the morning with a smartphone on the nightstand. And I didn't want to write a book that was about everything was better then. So much stuff is better now. So much stuff
Of
was
course.
kind of uh, yes, kind of crazy in hindsight. We didn't wear seatbelts, and in fact, we tucked the seatbelts into the crevice uh, behind the seat, the bench seats, because otherwise the seatbelt was a safety hazard. The buckle could swing and hit you in the face. Um, People were littering, people were hitchhiking on the interstate. There was leaded gasoline. This is just car related stuff.
Yes.
Nobody wore a helmet. Nobody, playground equipment was you'd fry your legs, thighs on a 105-degree slide that was been baking in the sun all day. All that stuff, people kind of eventually figured out, and yet, as people will tell you, most of us did survive it.
Right? We did, didn't we? Somehow. I mean, no bicycle helmets right there. Like my children would never have been allowed to go out on a bike without a bike helmet. So somehow I survived
I
my
mean,
childhood not wearing a bike helmet.
I mentioned in the car not only no bike helmets, but at a certain age, you just stopped using your hands to ride a bike too. And I was riding
Yep, me
my
too.
bike hands free, daydreaming as I was wont to do when I smashed into the back of a parked car on the street that I lived on, and my only concern was was anybody looking out the window? Did they see me crash into this? And then I kind of picked up my bike and got back on it and rode away. My kids have bikes, but they don't ride them to explore the way that we did. I could ride my bike to
Oh
Pickwick,
yeah.
the candy store and convenience store, to buy baseball cards. And um, I've retraced that route since. I live in Connecticut now, but this is in Bloomington, Minnesota, where I grew up. And there's no way I would allow my kids to make that same bike ride now across several busy streets. And
Nope.
and but quite the opposite happened when I was a kid, where I was perfectly content to watch TV all day, but I was told to get out of the house, get on your bike, go do something. You can't even
I
stay in
know.
the yard. Go away.
Oh my
And so that's what I
gosh.
did.
Yeah, my mom would say, "Go find something to do." Go find something to do, or I'll give you something to do. And the thing she was going to give you to do, you were like, bye. I'll go find somebody that's at home.
And that's part of the how the Stingray bike loomed so large in my imagination was because I would go to a friend's house to see if they were home, and I could tell if his bike was gone, he wasn't home, or
Right.
worse, if there were four bikes in his driveway, then they were doing something that I hadn't been invited to do. Now I've got to knock on the door, and
Right.
and you know, but that was a summer day. We think of summer as a kid. as lasting forever. Well, every individual summer day lasted forever, and it wasn't because I wasn't having a good time. I have so many great memories of childhood summers, but so much of childhood was also boring. It was long. There was nothing to do. That was when your mom said nothing to do. The response would always be, "But there's nothing to do." And my kids say it now. What are we going to do? Say, "I don't know what you're going to do today. That's up to you to decide." But being
Right.
forced out of the house required you to. I would take a soccer ball and bounce it on my head. Okay, I've now done 7 in a row. Now let's see if I can do 11 in a row. Now I'm up to 185. Or same thing with the tennis ball against the wall. And to my kids playing Xbox, that sounds completely
Ludicrous.
ridiculous. And believe me, if I had Xbox as a kid, I'd have been playing it.
Right.
My parents probably wouldn't have allowed me to get it because we didn't have any of the cool stuff. At least that's what my siblings and I tell ourselves. But when Kevin Sundom got Pong, and you could take 2 bars and hit a little digital dot across the TV screen,
For
it
hours.
blew our minds. So for
Yeah.
hours, and that's another thing that I'm not claiming is better. To stand in the yard heading a soccer ball for a couple of hours on end isn't inherently valuable, but it did require you to come up with novel ways to entertain yourself.
Yeah, I always tell my kids this story. I actually taught myself how to walk on my hands out, and we had a front walk, and I taught myself how to walk on my hands very far, I might add. And they'd say, "Well, how'd you do it?" I'm like, "I did it every day." "Oh, how long did it take you?" I'm like, "I did it every day. Whenever I didn't have anything to do, I'd go outside and practice walking on my hands, and eventually I got really far. Like, from spending a whole summer walking on my hands in the front yard. Like that's they're
I
like,
did
"Why
this.
would you do that?" I'm like, "Because it gave me something to do. I don't know."
I taught myself to juggle the same way. My kids say, "How did you learn to juggle?" I said, "Well, by standing in a garage, out of the garage door up, and there was nothing but and it wasn't like juggling tennis balls. It was like a tennis ball, a football, and a hockey puck or something. And you just, it was like MacGyver. You have these 3 things, figure out a game to play with it, and that's what you had to do. And I was the kind of kid who was introverted. Is one of the reasons I became a writer. I was super uncomfortable going and knocking on a neighbor's door. Can Billy come out to play? I would kind of stand conspicuously in the street, hoping somebody would see me and they would come play with me, which didn't happen very often. But it was. I had a great childhood, and if you have a happy childhood, whether for me it was the '70s. I hope my kids growing up in the 2010s or whatever we call this decade
Right.
are also think of this as a golden age. As improbable as that seems some days, given the news,
Yes.
I like to think that they will. They got a huge kick out of the Sears Christmas catalog this holiday season. I actually have one from 1978 that somebody gave to me, and they would just page through it the way I did as a kid, and say, "This is how you kind of decided what you wanted as a kid for Christmas." Of course, now they're on Amazon or um,
Right.
they're online. Everything's done online. But I said, this was the largest collection of toys in the world. There was no Toys R Us. There was
Right.
no Amazon. There was this thing that landed like an anvil on your doorstep in October. I didn't know that. My mom didn't put it out until after Thanksgiving. And then my oldest brother got first crack at it. I got second, or my next oldest brother got second crack at it. I got third crack at it. So that by the time that I'm looking through the Sears catalog, it's dog-eared. Things are circled. Pages are torn out. And but they're fascinated by it. They loved the Sears catalog. They loved the rotary dial phone. They loved listening to the '70s on 7 on Sirius XM while I was writing
Right.
the book. I was
My
listening
favorite
to
channel.
'70s music. Yeah, now my 13-year-old daughter, likes '70s music at least as much as she likes current pop hits. So I don't know if that's a disservice that I've done to her or a service. She wanted very much to see James Taylor in concert here in Connecticut.
Oh,
We
that's
went one
awesome.
night, and yeah, and we there was an intermission, and James Taylor announced from the stage that he's contractually obliged to do an intermission. He said, "I don't do anything. I just go backstage and look at my watch." But we'll take a 10-minute break. And when we came back from the bathroom, he was sitting on the edge of the stage, and my daughter went up with my phone to try to get a selfie with James Taylor. He misunderstood her and took my phone out of her hands and signed the phone with a Sharpie. As a result, she came back in tears saying, he signed your phone. I wanted him to take a selfie. And I said, this is way better. Now she has a signed iPhone case signed by James Taylor, and she likes it, and she likes the Beatles, and she likes
Bee
stuff like
Gees.
Seals and Crofts and the Bee Gees and
Yes.
movies from the '70s. And the Welcome Back Kotter theme was on the other day, and she not only knew the song, but she knows what Welcome Back Kotter is. And so, in some ways, it's a cool connection that while these are still very much the olden days, I mean, the
Right.
'70s to her are what the '30s were when I was a kid. 40 years previous, when my dad was, a kid somehow. But it's cool. She thinks it's cool.
Yeah, and not only did I mean the nostalgia is awesome, but your stories. I mean, the reason this book is so good is because you are a great storyteller, and I loved learning about the history that you put behind things like cereal. Like I learned stuff about the cereal I was eating, and the TV dinners, and I loved the Evil Knievel story because I remembered the Evil
Well,
Knievel. You know,
the book is full of objects and some of the stories behind those objects. But my dad started traveling a lot for a company he worked for when we moved to the Twin Cities, and so we would fly on the 747, which made its first voyage in January of 1970. So, and I was fascinated by the spiral staircase there was a second floor of this
yes.
airplane, and a bar up there, and or the Bic Cristal pen where you could
Oh my
remove
god,
the little blue cap plug and take the ink stem out and use it to shoot spitballs.
I know.
And those every kid had those. So when the teacher would turn around to see who shot the spitball, she couldn't decide who it was because every kid had five Bic blue pens in their desk. The Schwinn Stingray bicycle, or uh, later I wanted a Panasonic boombox. When I got to be in seventh, eighth grade, and ride around with a basketball under one hand and a boombox in the other hand while biking with no hands down 98th Street in Bloomington. Talk about something you wouldn't let your kids do today.
Right.
But yeah, so so much of my childhood, I think my kids today too, is longing for these different objects. And if I just got that Nerf football or something, then
Oh,
life would be
right.
great. And then if you get it, there's that one more thing that you really want, and that really didn't run out for me, I think, until maybe high school. And then you realize that the next little thing isn't going to solve your problems. But I went to Catholic grade school, and we had to wear a uniform, and the only thing that could distinguish yourself when dressing for school was what shoes you wore. So I
Right.
think it instilled in us, probably accidentally and not healthily, but gosh, we wanted those Adidas or we wanted those Nikes when Nike became a big thing. And my mom would always say, well, here are these Tom McCanns. They have four stripes. That's like one stripe better than Adidas. And I'm thinking,
No.
Mom, it's not a military rank. One more stripe doesn't make it. But I think thinking back, I think that's how we became kind of wanting all these things, is because you had to wear navy blue pants and a light blue shirt to school every day. Gosh, if I could only have those certain kind of sneakers, I would really be cool.
Yeah, and if you ever watched the '70s show, I'm sure you have. I think right.
Of
And
course.
what some of the stories with your dad, I related to that dad and related to my own dad. Like some of those, just the same sayings, that they would say. Like I said, it was a different world, so they had like I don't know, maybe like we try very hard to be kind to our children all the time and say nice things and
We
um,
well, upset them or offend them, or it's crazy. And the whole phenomenon of helicopter parenting. Um, I was at a Catholic grade school gym with my own children recently, and there was no place for the spectators to stand. And I told somebody, I said, that's because these gyms were built at a time when parents didn't
come,
necessarily
they
attend
didn't
their
come.
kids' games. They weren't expected to. Now parents go to the kids' practice and stay for the whole practice. But
I did.
I wasn't offended if my parents didn't go to my little league game. They had better stuff to do. I got it completely. And my dad, uh, as he should have been, he worked very hard, was napping in front of college football on Saturday afternoon. I can't remember
Right.
the last time I've been able to take a nap on the couch. I would be drummed out of the modern parent, society if I did that. But he was the right one. I'm the crazy one, for bending to their will like that. But it was the proverbial different time, and these are some of the ways I think that it was better. Kids were required to figure stuff out on their own, and my kids ask me to get a banana when it's on the other side of the table, and they're sitting at the table and I'm in another room. So there has to be something in between that's the right way to do things.
Yeah, I know because my 18-year-old son, he's in Catholic school and he's a senior. And, I wake up and I make his breakfast and pack his lunch and, send him off his way to school. And I'm always like, oh my God, he's one of my last two that I have at home. But it's like, it couldn't be more easy for that child. If I could go with him and like,
Well,
walk him into school, it would be.
even lunch. Well, so when we make our kids lunches, we're making four different lunches. This one likes the crust,
Right.
that one likes this. And I always tell them, I said, you know what my lunch was? My lunch was a square of Wonder Bread,
Oh my
a
God.
circle of Oscar Mayer bologna, another square of a Kraft single cheese.
Product.
Hellman's is mortaring the whole thing together. And that was my lunch for like 10 years,
I know, me too.
to the point that when I finally left college and I went to New York and I was working in the Time and Life building as a fact checker at Sports Illustrated, the first night on a Sunday night that we're closing the magazine, and somebody came by my office. They were taking orders for the people in the office they were going to the A&K Deli at 50th and 7th in New York. And what did I want? And I said, I'll just have bologna and American on bread with mayonnaise. And this person just howled with laughter and started telling the other people what my order was. That was the most ridiculous thing they had ever heard. And then I realized, hey, maybe I shouldn't be eating the same sandwich I had in kindergarten now that I'm 21 and living in New York. I didn't even think the deli carried bologna and American and white bread, but anyway, that's what I grew up liking because that's what I was told I was having. Now, we ask our kids,
What do you want?
well, what do you guys want for
What
dinner?
do you
Where do
want?
you want to go for dinner? Yeah,
Yeah,
and we paralyze them with options so that they don't they can't make a choice. So
absolutely.
I didn't have a lot of choices about the menu when I was growing up, and eating out was such a rare thrill that we didn't care where we were going. We were going to go to Mr. Steak for $1.99 ribeye.
Uh,
Gosh, it may as well be a five-star Michelin restaurant. Shakey's Pizza, where we get a styrofoam hat, and before we even get it home, my brother has punched a hole in the crown of the styrofoam bowl or taken a bite out of the brim just to get a laugh. I mean, those events just are huge memories in my mind. And when I sat down to start the book, the first thing I did was write down kind of some of the most vivid memories of childhood, and some of them they would have been anybody's most vivid memories when we took
right.
a family vacation to California, flew out there. But other things were just like, the time I tore the Levi's tag out of my older
Oh my
brother's
God.
corduroys
I was
because he
so,
said he still wear them at the time, and he was going to choke me to death. I to this day, if I only had room for like 15 memories in my increasingly feeble brain, that would remain one of them. So it's funny how something just affect you so much as a kid, and I'm conscious of that now with my own kids. How and it kind of informed the book too, writing it. How I see, you think of these memories as this kind of nostalgic childhood as one kind of happy blur, but and my kids are happy, but they have so many anxieties and fears,
oh yeah.
and son would lie in bed in the summer and he'd say, Dad, he's feeling his arms, and he said, Dad, I have 28 bug bites now, and yesterday I had 21. And I had forgotten about that growing up in Minnesota, inventorying, the bug bites, like rereading the day in Braille, or just the fear, the mortal fear of the basement. My kids still don't want to go into the basement. Dad, can you come down to the basement? I have to go first, turn the lights on, then they're happy to play down there, but I have to go down there. And I remember it. We had a refrigerator in our basement, and my mom would
Oh,
sometimes send me down to get something in the fridge or the deep freeze. And there was always that moment where you turn on the light and
like
then you kind of
look
go
around.
downstairs and turn the corner, and there's unfinished part of the basement, and there was never anything down there, but every single time you went down there, it kind of freaked you out. There was something down there one time. We lived across from a little marsh, and there was my mom one day found a live garter snake in the basement, in the unfinished part of the basement, and she was a great indoorsman like the rest of my family, and so she put a bucket over it, duct taped it to the floor of the basement, and waited until my dad got home from work like 8 hours later, and told him there was a probably enraged claustrophobic snake in the basement, and he had to get it out. He took an hour thinking it was like, REO Speedwagons, you can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish, slid it under the bucket, carried it across the street, and set the snake free. But yeah, the basement still is a freaky place to our kids, and so that some of those traditions carry on.
That's right. Well, I want to tell you my favorite quote from your book. Okay, I had a lot of them, so I had to narrow it down to my favorite. I'm going to read it because it's a little long. It says, "There's no such thing as a carefree childhood, only a childhood that shifts the burden of care onto someone else. Mom is that someone else." I love that because I'm mom, first of all. And it was so
It's
true.
true. I mean, if your kids had a carefree childhood, it's because of you. You have to take on so many of those anxieties and reassure them and be the mighty Oz that they don't see operating behind the curtain, so that they can have this fantasy world that I hope that they live in, because it's such a short amount of time, as childhood, that you hope that they can have a relatively,
Carefree.
fantastic, carefree existence, because God knows, cares come all too soon,
Yes.
and then hopefully they'll do the same for their own children.
Yes, absolutely. Now, before you started writing novels, I just want to tell everybody quick because we're winding down. You were a writer for Sports Illustrated for many years,
Yeah,
and I wanted to
I
hear.
still write.
Oh, you still do write for them? Wow.
Yeah, I not as full time as I once did. I really enjoy writing books, but I still enjoy having one foot in the world of magazine writing and sports as well.
Well, I just think that would be for a guy like the best job in the whole entire world. So I just wanted to tell you, I think that's that has got to be the coolest job ever.
I can confirm that it is.
Okay.
It's a job. I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life. So when I
Wow.
talk about pretty soon adulthood will come, and with it all the anxieties and burdens of work, I haven't actually personally experienced that, but I'm told from others that adulthood can be full of worries. And so I've just been watching sports and writing about it, and writing, trying to relive my childhood through books. So
Well, I think that's awesome. Another thing I wanted to tell you is that I felt really bad for your sister. Okay. I have six children, two of which are girls, but she had to be the only girl with four boys. So I can only imagine what
yeah,
her childhood was like.
well, she agrees with you. She also feels bad for
She also,
herself, and yes, we didn't treat her particularly well, and she hasn't forgotten many of our slights. But there's a story in the book about my brothers and I would play hockey in the basement,
yes.
and if the tennis ball or the puck or whatever we were using would go up behind the furnace or under the file cabinet, we wouldn't bother to try to fish it out. We'd just get whatever was closest to hand. And she came to the basement once and found us playing hockey with the decapitated head of her
Baby.
baby Tenderlove doll,
Right.
and my dad came down after hearing her screaming and reassured her that he would fix it. He, like, I think, hot glue gunned the head back on, but it looked even worse, I think, after that. But I always say that my sister, my little brother, two of my brothers who were playing in the basement, got hockey scholarships to college. My little brother was drafted by the New York Rangers, and my
Wow.
sister became an emergency room doctor. So I think, in that baby Tenderlove incident, my sister saw the care given to baby Tenderlove, and my brother became a hockey player. So it all worked out in the end, and we see how our childhood, traumas shape us as adults.
Yeah, and I can only imagine.
At least that's
Right. Your mom, after giving birth to three boys and getting a girl, was like, wow, I get a girl? Like, I just know I had only two boys and then a girl. And it was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with a girl? It was.
my mom, after giving birth to two boys, was ready for the girl, because in the baby book that she preserved for me, there are cards congratulating her in quotation marks on having a baby, but one of them says explicitly in beautiful cursive handwriting, "Jane, what happened to the girl you wanted?" Question mark. So it was no surprise that after two boys, she might have wanted a girl. And if you look at the haircuts that I had, for the first
Yes.
through eighth grade, she would crimp my hair with a curling iron when I had it for picture day at school. So I think I became her girl for a few years until she had my little sister as the fourth kid. So
Yeah. Well, I love this book. I'm so happy that I got to, meet you and read it. And, it was so much fun. Can you show everybody the cover again so that they can see it? Those of
that's a
people that
beautiful
are watching it on
that
video. Perfect 70s feel to it. I love that picture. And, in the book also, there's so many pictures and people are going to love it. I mean, the stories are awesome. The pictures are awesome. So, thank you so much. Are you working
good.
on something else right now? Is there another book?
I might write the sequel set in the '80s in high school and college, and I might have to relive another decade of my past, and I may have to turn the XM dial from '70s on 7 to '80s on 8 to re-immerse myself in that period.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Please tell me. You know how to get a hold of me. I want to read it and then I want to talk about it because since I'm
Debate.
right at that age. So I love the 80s too. I love the 70s and I love the 80s. So anyway, well, thank you so much, Steve. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you, Michelle. My pleasure.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Well, that was so much fun talking to Stephen. I had such a great time reliving the 70s and hearing his stories. I didn't say this then, but I just want to let you know that all his links will be at the bottom. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit like. And if you'd like to see every day's videos and get notified, I put out a video every day but Sunday, you can hit subscribe. But I just want to thank Stephen. That was so much fun. His book is really, really good, guys. If you grew up in the 70s, even if you didn't grow up in the 70s, he has amazing stories. But if you grew up in the 70s, you definitely want to get it. So anyway, thank you for watching.